This Read Aloud is brought to you by Walnut Middle School's Media Center.
My name is Ms. Boyle, and I teach 8th grade language arts on the Tigers team. I am also a writer outside of this place, outside of this space. So I've done some writing for the Grand Island Independent. I am a blogger for their website. I have also been published in the Grand Island Vibe, which is our tourism magazine. I've had some stuff published in Fine Lines, which is a creative writing journal. And recently, since I started teaching here, I decided that I really wanted to write a book. And so, gosh, Mr. Martin, it was in 2010, wasn't it? Then we started doing NaNoWriMo together. That stands for National Novel Writing Month. That's in November. And the goal in November is to write a 50,000-word novel. And so that was what really started me on my adventure in writing. So the book from which I am reading today is actually my second novel, and I'm currently working on a third. This one is the first in a series called Manifestation, and this first novel is called The Dreamer. Mr. Martin said he hasn't read this one yet. I actually do sometimes ask Mr. Martin to do a little bit of reading for me. He's something that's called a beta reader, somebody who will read your work and give you feedback on it so that you can revise and edit that work. And so he has been a beta reader for me before. So this is actually his first time in hearing this one. So I'll just go ahead and get started with this. And I don't know, Mr. Martin, let me know if you have any question after we get done. Okay. When I awaken, I know it has happened again. These dreams feel different. The waking up feels like pulling myself out of mud, like slogging through the tide that pulls me away from the shore, like pushing through snowdrifts. These awakenings exhaust me, and when they happen, I stumble through my mornings as though I haven't slept. Sometimes, most of the time. In fact, I remember dreams when I wake up. They are as clear as real memories. They are memories, I suppose, just bits and fragments of my day sorting themselves out in the filing cabinet of my brain, ways for me to process the events of the day and to sift through important and unimportant information. Everybody has those. Sometimes, though, I don't. It's those dreams that frighten me. Their residue clings to me like a spider web, sticky and bothersome, and try as I might, I cannot brush them away. They trail behind me over the course of the day, collecting the clues to what I've witnessed the night before. Each clue hangs onto my waking memory like an anchor, telling me to slow down, to notice, to observe. At 6:15 on Monday morning, I throw aside the covers and breathe slowly and deeply. I close my eyes to search for something, anything that might help me remember this one, but it is gone. It always is. I reach over to shut off my alarm. These dreams don't let me sleep until my normal waking time. By the dim morning light, I see my reflection in the full-length mirror that hangs crookedly on my wall. Red, grainy eyes stare back at me. I rub my hands over my face and into my hair and debate whether or not to shower. My pixie cut, standing on end and thick with grease, tells me that it's been at least 3 days since last I've bathed. I flop back onto my bed, throwing a forearm over my eyes. This day is so not worth the effort of showering. Unfortunately, experience tells me that the more alert I am, the more likely I'll be to stop whatever's supposed to happen today. Because last time, I almost didn't. I almost missed the clues, and I can't let that happen. The first time it happened, Jessie died, and I could have stopped it if I had been paying closer attention. I've showered. I do not feel better. Bruise coloring hangs under my eyes like thick, ripe grapes, and my mouth is cotton. Mom has forgotten to buy toothpaste again, so I have brushed with baking soda. It works, mostly. While I wait for a cup of instant coffee to heat in the microwave, I watch the news. Sometimes the news gives the first clue of the day. 2 years ago on a foggy November morning, I learned that the freezing temperatures caused black ice on the roadway. 2 cheerful newscasters who could have been poster children for the Aryan race gleefully warned motorists to slow down before turning it back to you, Ted, on a feel-good spot about a lost puppy that had returned home. I remember that moment clearly because it was the first time I had ever felt that brush of observation like a breeze across my skin. It was my first clue. I just didn't know it. No reasonable 14-year-old pays attention to the weather. I was only 14. I didn't care one bit about driving, and I had awoken that morning feeling groggy and out of sorts. The microwave dings, pulling me from my memories. I remove the scalding cup and pick my way carefully across the kitchen to the living room. My mother and I are not neat people. The floor is littered with mail and laundry and dishes and boxes from various Chinese takeout places. My mother tells me she is not a hoarder. She just doesn't give a crap about what other people think about her. A part of me admires this. I understand that. I don't give a crap about what other people anymore. Another part of me is annoyed. 2 weeks ago, I told her that if I showed up to school with roaches crawling out of my backpack one more time, the school was going to refer us to Health and Human Services. Since then, my mother has taken out one bag of trash, and I made an effort on cleaning my room. I guess she doesn't mind if they call HHS. Perhaps I'm one of the people about whose opinion she just doesn't give a crap. I shift a pile of slightly damp clothing out of the way as I sit on the sofa. The odor of mildew wafts toward me as the top of the pile comes to rest against an old pizza box. I cringe. I hate that smell. I remind myself to do laundry later. The coffee warms me as the news threatens to pull me back to sleep. People in some small country in Europe are upset about immigration. They're threatening to build a wall. People in Texas are upset about immigration. They're threatening to build a wall. Someone saved a dog from drowning. Nothing tugs at my clue strings. As much as I want to shut off the news and go back to sleep, I know that it's my responsibility to observe. Shortly before the bus is due to arrive, I take another sip of coffee. The news stories are on repeat, and my memories drift back to Jessie. She was my next-door neighbor and my best friend. Her parents used to be good friends with my parents. When my dad left my mom, Jessie's mom watched over me. Up through middle school, I spent nearly every single day over at their house. Jessie's mom told me that my mom was having a hard time and that she needed to be taking her medication, but we just couldn't afford it. She said that she and my mom had worked out a deal where I could go over to their house for dinner or stay the night whenever I wanted to. I didn't even need to ask. I never wondered about that until after Jessie's mom moved away. I didn't realize it wasn't a normal thing to eat every night over at somebody else's house. That all changed the morning that Jessie died. Because of the dream, I had gotten up much, much earlier that morning. Sometimes I rode to school with Jessie and her dad, but I had fallen asleep on the couch after the weather forecast. I awoke to honking outside of my door. Jessie and her dad were waiting for me in their little red Nissan. I hadn't even changed out of my pajamas yet, so I waved them on. As she backed out of the driveway, I felt it again, that little tickle, the feeling of a bug crawling on my skin or a strand of hair dragging across my arm. It was while I was waiting for the bus that I felt the tug, an anchor dragging across the bottom of the sea, except it was coming from the base of my spine, and I was sure that I was going to fall on my knees right there on the street corner. I had no idea what was wrong with me, just that something was suddenly, inexplainably wrong. I started gasping, hunched over, my hands on my knees, and some older girl came over to check to see if I was okay. For a minute, I stood there fighting for breath. Tears sprang to my eyes, and I couldn't say anything. I heard the girl talking with her friend and wondered if they should call 911, and then it stopped as suddenly as it had started. I stood up shakily and told her that I was okay. I debated going back to my house and calling myself in sick, but the bus came around the corner, and the nice girl had taken my arm and helped me up the steps, and then I was on the bus and on my way to school. She told me that she was taking some nursing classes that year and that I must have just hyperventilated. I didn't think that was it, but what did I know? They pulled me out of my fourth period class that day to give me the news before they made an announcement to the whole school. During the whole walk down to the office, I felt like my body was alive with spider webs. I kept brushing at them, thinking I had literally walked into something. And when I sat across from a guidance counselor, the dream rushed back to me, replaying like a movie in my head. I knew what she was going to say before she opened her mouth. The little red Nissan zipped down the road. Jessie and her dad were in the front seat arguing over music again. It was a playful argument. It always was, and Jessie always won. Ahead, traffic cruised along the highway. It wasn't too busy, not yet. The morning rush probably wouldn't hit for another 15 minutes. A semi-truck driver changed lanes and accelerated as his light changed from red to green. Jessie's dad looked up from the radio. His light was red. He was close to the intersection, but not too close, not close enough to worry. He stepped on the brakes as his little girl reached over to change the station back. The car fishtailed just a little. Jesse gasped, and he pressed the brakes harder to slow down. The back end of the vehicle whipped around, and they careened into the intersection in tight, graceful circles. The truck driver pumped his brakes and his horn. 1, 2, 3. The load was too heavy. He couldn't stop. Jessie pressed her hand to the passenger side window. Daddy, stop. Daddy, stop. Make it stop. I'm trying, honey. I'm trying. Just be... The semi-truck pushed the little red Nissan completely through the intersection and into oncoming traffic. A blue Taurus and a beat-up old minivan drove into the ditches on either side of the road. The radio station in the little red Nissan sang, "Stay with me," as the payload of the 18-wheeler jackknifed forward. The Nissan and the radio came to an abrupt stop as a silver extended cab pickup with personalized license plates reading "Make My Day" slammed into the car. The semi glided elegantly into the ditch on the other side of the road. Slowly, one by one, the drivers of the vehicles climbed out. With shaking fingers, the mother in the old minivan called 911. The young woman in the Hello Kitty scrubs ran from her blue Taurus into the middle of the street directly toward the crumpled Nissan. The semi-truck driver eased from his cab and immediately fell to his knees, too shaken to stand or to assist. The pickup truck driver slammed his hands on the steering wheel once, twice, before emerging from the truck, ignoring the trickle of blood that slid from the contusion on his forehead. The ding, ding, ding of the open door from the pickup joined the pitter-patter of fluid and the hiss of steam coming from the Nissan. In the little red car, nothing moved. "She's gone, isn't she?" I asked my guidance counselor. Miss Newman didn't waste time asking me what I meant. She didn't beat around the bush. She didn't ask me how I knew. She just nodded. Once. She looked almost relieved that she didn't have to tell me. She allowed me to sit in her office for the rest of the morning until my mom could be reached and could pick me up from school. I put together the clues sitting there next to the empty box of Kleenex and a poster that told me that our diversity is what brings us together. I knew then that things would have turned out differently if I had just asked them to wait for me. The timing would have been off. It was my fault they died. It was my fault her mom moved away. It was my fault everything else went to heck for my mom and me after that. I glance at the clock on the microwave. It is 2 minutes slow. My coffee now is lukewarm at best. It's time to get to the bus. I still won't drive. So that is the end of my first two chapters.
That is super good. Now when do I get a copy of this?
Well, I have my current beta reader is actually Mrs. Eckhoff, and
that's right. This is the one you're doing for your science.
Right.
Science
So
okay.
this is this is a science fiction novel, and so I'm a little uncomfortable sometimes with the science part of the science fiction. So Mrs. Eckhoff is my first beta reader for this one, and then after that, then we can talk.
Okay. I'm super excited. Right. I've got to get my hands on this. That sounds super good. Yeah, I like it because it's like it's not a new story. There's lots of ones out there. Like, did you ever see Early Edition?
I did not.
It's an old TV show about he gets tomorrow's newspaper today.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it's totally different.
Yeah,
It's not dreams, sure. But it's that whole idea where he's trying to prevent some future event. Mm-hmm. And so this is really cool where it's dreams, but she can't remember the. Oh my goodness.
And with this, so that's obviously Hannah. Her name hasn't been introduced yet, but she is the protagonist of this novel. And she will, in the very next chapter, she meets Gabriel, who is the reason for the dream. And over the course of the next few chapters, she discovers that she, with her precognitive dreaming, is not as unusual as she thinks she is. And Gabriel has something special about him, too.
Okay. Oh, that's super exciting. Oh man, I can't wait to read the rest of that. That's going to be really good. Okay, now just a couple things about you.
Sure.
What are you reading currently?
I am currently reading The Way of Kings by Brandon
Sanderson.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yes. And where are you?
I'm still very close to the beginning.
Okay.
I am in an assassination attempt.
Yes. That's the first chapter. Second chapter because the first one's prologue, but
yes.
Okay, that is super good. It's really interesting because in his next book, you get that same night of the assassination through a different person's eyes, and every chapter of the next book is going to be that same night from a different person's perspective.
Awesome.
So
I'm looking forward to that.
That's oh my goodness, that book is so great. Even though, like, were you confused after the first chapter?
Well, I can't say I was confused, but yeah, it doesn't maybe read like a normal book.
There's not many stories that start out and they're like, okay, here's the first chapter.
Yeah.
Okay, 4,500 years later,
Right.
and you're like, what?
Yeah, that's
What?
true.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
So awesome. Okay, now favorite book.
I have several favorites. But the one that I've probably read the most over the course of my life is a book called Watership Down by Richard Adams.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is, I read it for the very first time when I was in 4th grade, and I've read it 5 times over the course of my life.
Okay, now I've heard that name of that book so many times because I read Redwall.
Oh yeah.
I've read Redwall. So you think it's worth picking up? It's like super good.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. It is at its heart. It is a story of adventure and trying to make your way in the world. The main characters just happen to be rabbits.
Yeah. That is super good. Okay, and then this is a question just for you. If you were to play the part of any character in, let's say, a movie or a play of any of these books that you have read, who would you want to portray on the stage?
That is really difficult. Mr. Martin has alluded to, like, I am an actor. That's another thing that I do in my life outside of school. And so I've already gotten to play a couple really, really good roles from literature, which has been fantastic. But oh my gosh, and I'm too old to play that character. But probably one of my favorites, if I had been a much younger person, I would have loved to have played Scout and To Kill a Mockingbird.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do like an adult version of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, that's the next book.
Yeah, I know.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then what about one to direct?
I actually got to direct probably one of my favorite pieces of literature.
What?
So that was Flowers for Algernon.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Oh,
and the 8th graders this year got a chance to go see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So, yep, that is definitely one of my favorite. My next piece of literature that I am looking to try to direct, but I haven't found a good script adaptation of it yet, is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Okay. Oh, that would be really good. That would be really good. Well, thank you so much for coming in and reading to us. I can't wait to... Now you ruined it for me. Now.